Hello, welcome back to this sublimation series. This is video number 3 in a series where we are learning the process of sublimating photos onto fabric, which is really great for quilts and other sewing projects. Today, we are learning about cropping our photos and maybe even adding some fun text to your photos before we ever even print them. As an example, I have this little quilt block here of a quilt that I'm working on, and you can see I added where we were with our camping trip and the date. So fun things like that using a program called Inkscape. I'm going to link Inkscape down in the description box below. You can find that. It is a free vectorizing software, and you can go check that out. I do have several Inkscape video tutorials here on my channel. I do have one specific video that really goes a lot more into detail about cropping photos using Inkscape. If you want to check that out, you can find it here on my channel. Today's going to be a little bit of a crash course, and we're going to play around with the photo that we've been working on throughout this series. We're going to make a pillow with this photograph. One of the things that I'd like to mention when printing photos on fabric is I like to print my photos as a PDF. I find that it keeps the actual size really nicely, and I get really great print results when I save my photograph as a PDF before I print it. I can do that in Inkscape as well. So we're going to switch the screen. It's going to look crazy for a minute, and we're going to open up Inkscape. And I apologize if you hear my bird in the background. There was 2 great big birds on our deck, and he is going nuts. Okay, maybe he'll settle down here in a minute. So let's switch the screen over to my desktop. You'll see my Inkscape program here. I am working in the version 0.91. It is a little bit of an older version, but it works really well on my laptop. So you can get an older version or a newer version. 0.91 is the Inkscape version I'm working with today. Now, just keep in mind when my screen opens, you might see toolbars in different places that look differently than you. I have gone in and changed the location of my toolbars. This video is not going to show you how to do that, but there are videos on YouTube that show you how to customize your layout of your desktop for Inkscape. So go search that if you want to rearrange your toolbar menus. My screen might look different than yours, but all of the tools that I'm using are in each version of Inkscape. Okay, so we have Inkscape pulled up, and by default, you're going to see a little box in the middle of the screen. We're going to call that our sheet of paper, what we're printing. Whatever's inside that box is what you will be saving as a PDF, okay? So keep that in mind upon opening your software each and every time. That box goes back to a default setting, which is not 8.5 by 11. And so the very first thing I do before moving on and bringing in my photo is I determine what size paper I'm going to be using to print my photo. Now, each printer is different. I happen to have the Epson EcoTank 15,000, and so I can print paper up to 13 inches wide and 19 inches long. I can print 8.5 by 11, 8.5 by 14, 11 by 17, and all in between. So we're going to determine what size paper we're printing on. For you, if more than likely, you might be printing an 8.5 by 11. All of these words. We're going to go up to File in this top left corner. We're going to open up the Document Properties menu before we move on to bringing in that photo. When you do, a new box will open up. Let me just move it here on the screen. And this is where you're going to change your paper size. Before we do that though, as a quilter, I am just used to working in inches. By default, Inkscape works in pixels. So we're going to change the default units from pixels to inches, so that when I resize my photos and I do any of that stuff, we're actually working in inches and not pixels. Now the page size, this is where you can scroll through and adjust the size of the paper that you see on the screen and the size of the paper that you're printing on. So a lot of the times we're just printing on US letter, 8.5 by 11. You could click that. For my pillow, and because I'm able to print larger, I'm going to go right down to here and choose custom size. We've changed it to inches, and I'm going to type in this box, and I want you to see the box on the screen change as I do this. 13 inches wide and 19 inches tall. There is our sheet of paper that we're printing on in real true size. We can close this properties box now, and when we scroll up, there is my sheet of paper that we're printing on, right? Now we're going to bring in the photo that we've been working on throughout this series. So I'm going to go to File and Import. We're going to find this photograph wherever you've saved it. Mine's on the desktop, Lisa's pillow. I'm going to click on that, and we're going to open up that photograph. When this box pops up, I don't change any of the default settings. I just click OK. And it might take a second. This is a large photo. Let me just zoom out here so you can see the whole thing. See how big this is? This is an actual size. If you look right here, it's going to tell you how big your photo is. 31 inches wide and 55 inches tall. That is very big. And one of the things that I want to say as we're doing these videos, the larger the picture size is, the better the resolution of your photo, the better it's going to print on your fabric. If you're taking a really small resolution picture and you're making it bigger, chances are it's going to look fuzzy and pixelated, and it's going to print fuzzy and pixelated. So the larger size photograph you can get to work with, the better. Well, we know we don't want to print this at 31 by 55. My printer won't accommodate that. So we're just going to, while it's selected, you see the little arrows in the corner, I'm going to hold down the Control key, and I'm going to grab one of these arrows, and we're just going to make it a little bit smaller for right now, okay? And we're just going to put that off to the side. Actually, let's zoom in on it. Here's our photograph. Now for my pillow, let's talk about the plans for my pillow. I know I want to print a square that is 12.5 by 12.5 for the front of my pillow. So let's just go ahead and draw a square from Create Rectangles and Squares. We're going to draw a square on the screen. And right in this top menu, we're going to change the size of this square to 12.5 to 12.5. Now that square is exactly 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches. That's the size of the photo we are going to save and print, right? So I'm going to just put this off to the side for a second, and I'm going to make a copy of it. Right here, duplicate object. I'm going to click on it, and it's made a copy of that box. Now, when I'm cropping my photos, I like to create the shape, the exact same size that I'm saving my photo, but I like to change the color, so I just pick a color from the bottom of the screen, and I change the opacity of it so that I can see through this box, okay? If you're looking for this menu, you'll want to go to this little box right here, Edit Objects and Colors and Gradients. When you do, a menu will open up, and we can change the opacity right here in this slide bar. So now when we move this square over top of our photo, we see the square, and we can also see our photo underneath of it. So first things first, we're going to crop this photo at 12.5 by 12.5 because I want to show you that. You'll see this photo is different. It's very long and very narrow. So if I wanted to make this photo 12.5 by 12.5, I would be cutting out quite a bit from the photograph. Things that I actually want to keep in the photo, right? Let's zoom in on this. I would get my face and Harlan's face and a tad bit of the sign. We'd get our camper in the background, but I really feel like we would miss south of the border, the sign and the sky and all of that. We're going to do it just so I can show you how to do that. But so I've resized the photo. You see that the orange box is within that photo and it is selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift button on my keyboard and I'm going to also click on the photograph. When I do, you'll see there's a little dotted line around both objects. On my mouse, I'm going to right click. A menu will pop up and we're going to select Set Clip. When we do this, it's going to crop my photo at 12.5 by 12.5 inches. Before we move on, when using Set Clip, we need to make a duplicate of this picture. So again, right here on this top menu, we're going to duplicate object and we can move that picture over. We're going to click on the original and right click on our mouse again and release that clip. So it's brought back the original photo and our orange box that we're cropping with, right? So this photo here, let's move that out of the way. This photo here is right under 12.5 by 12.5 inches. We could lock it and just bump it up just a little bit, 12.5 by 12.5. So for many of you, that cropping there would be sufficient for you to print, right? It would work. Because we're dealing with a different orientation with my photo, we're going to keep on editing, but I want to show you, before we move on, you would take your photo and it needs to be within your paper printing box, right? So I like to go to Align and Distribute. If your menu isn't open, it's this box right here, Align and Distribute. And we're going to change this from last selected in this drop-down menu to page. And so when we click on these two buttons here, it's going to center our photo within our page, horizontally and vertically. Now we could, at this point, save this cropped photo at 12.5 by 12.5 as a PDF. Now I'm not really happy with that cropping, and so at this point, cropping your photo, you would be done, but we're gonna go beyond that just a little bit for this pillow. I'm gonna show you how you can add some words, because sublimation, you can do so much beyond just printing the photograph. Okay, so we're gonna plan out this pillow. Let's get rid of that photograph. Let's zoom in. Let's see, I don't know how I want to make my pillow. So let's zoom in on the photo. I've just clicked on the photo and we're going to reduce the size of this photograph. Again, I'm just holding on the Control button and I'm dragging the corners of the photograph. So now we can position this within our square. Now my square is on top. See that? I want to lower that so when I click on the photo, I'm moving the photo, right? So let's put that down below. Now when I click on my photo, we're not moving that orange box. This orange box represents the front of my pillow. And keep in mind that as quilters, or if you're sewing this into a project, you will have the 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around this box, which is going to disappear into our pillow. So keep that in mind. Sometimes I'll even make a duplicate of the 12.5 by 12.5 inch box, and I'll color it a different color, and I'll resize this at 12 inches, and I will center it on my 12.5 by 12.5 so that I see my seam allowances, right? So now, let's move this picture out of the way. The green box represents what will be seen on our pillow, and the orange box represents the 12.5 with the seam allowances, right? So we want to make sure we stay within the green space of this square. So let's bring our photo back in. Now again, this is sort of like a crash course, and I'm moving very quickly through this, but my best recommendation is to open up Inkscape and to play around with all of this. And for each one of the features I'm showing you, there's a video on Inkscape on YouTube that you could learn more about it, okay? So we're going to move this photograph, and we're going to resize it within the green space of this box. All right, so that means we're going to have all this empty space on the right side of our pillow. And one thing I noticed is that my photo is mirror imaged. So I'm going to click on that, and for working purposes, I want to have the photo right side up. Right in this menu here, we can flip so that it is right side facing up or not mirror imaged. So there's my photo. What do I want to do with this empty space? Let's go ahead and import another photo that I've already worked on, and we're going to fill up some of this space with an additional photo. So you can easily do that. Let's go to File and Import. And let's find a picture that I've already played with. We'll do the bridge at the Vermont Country Store. That's a good photo. We're going to import that picture. It's going to take a second. And that picture is huge as well. We're going to zoom out, and we're going to resize this photo, and we're going to flip it around like that. Now this photo was also saved as a mirror image, so we're just going to flip that around. See, the writing is right side up. With it selected, I'm just going to drag it to right about where I want it to be. And we're going to resize this photo to fill in some space. And let me just zoom in so you can see what we're doing. See that green space? We're just trying to make sure that it's equally spaced within the green space of our pillow. So I kind of like that. And now we have a little bit of empty space down here in this bottom right corner. So let's add some words. I'm going to select the Create and Edit Text Objects from the menu. It's a little A icon, and I'm going to click in the background, and we can start typing. So let's say, what do I want to say? Loving our adventures. All right, so we've typed out what we want to say on our pillow, and with the edit text still on, I want you to see right up here in this top menu, we can adjust the spacing between the lines, so we can reduce that. We can also adjust the spacing between our letters, so we can bring it in like that. And Let's bring it in a little bit closer, just a little bit. We can also adjust the font. So let's pick a font. Wow, there's so many. Let's see. There was one that I really liked, Sacramento. Let's try that. Yeah, let's go with that. All right. So I'm going to resize this and make it a little bit bigger. And we're going to just place this in here and see what we think. I think it's a little too fancy. Now that I look at it, I'm going to click on the edit text and I'm going to change that font one more time. Let's pick something simple. There we go. Rose Garden. That's nice. Let's resize the text one more time like that so that it just fits in this empty space. We can even, with the text selected, we can hold down the Shift button and select the photograph up above it, and we can center that text with the photo right above it, just to make sure everything is nice and centered. All right, so there's the layout of my pillow, right? There's the front of my pillow, the two photos, and the text. Let's go ahead and show you what it's going to look like on the pillow. So let's go back to this original box. Right now it's colored black. I'm going to go to the fill and stroke right up here. I already have the menu open on the side. We're going to change the color of the background to white. Right? It's going to look like there's nothing there. You can add a stroke, a little box around that if you want to, and we'll do that. I have a very, very thin little stroke, so if I click off of the photo, you see the outline right there. So let's move this a little bit closer. We know that we have arranged the photos and the text to stay within the 12 inches by 12 inches, the finished size of the pillow, right? So let's click on the text and hold the Shift button down and click on both pictures. And at this point, we're going to group all these together so that when you move something, everything moves exactly the same. You can go up to Object and hit Group. It's going to take a second to think about it. Let's zoom back out. Now that we have the front of our pillow selected, we're going to also hold down the Shift button and select this white square, and we're going to align and distribute one more time, and we're going to center our graphics right onto that pillow front. Now everything is exactly spaced perfectly, so when I sew my pillow with a backing and a zipper, I'm not going to lose any of my photo or the text. It's all going to fall within that finished 12 inches by 12 inches. So I want you to play around with those things. You might find having the separate boxes to accommodate your seam allowance is really helpful. It is also really helpful if you don't want to lose any of the details of your photo. To keep that in mind, what is in that seam allowance? So let's go ahead and get rid of these boxes. Let's select everything here and let's group this together one more time. So you'll see the front of the pillow is selected and the 12.5 by 12.5 inch box is selected. Let's go to Object and Group. Now before we move on, there's one more thing I want to tell you about sublimation is that when you're saving your photographs or your text, before you save it, it's always a good idea at this point to mirror image your design before you save it. So we have everything selected. We'll go back up to this top menu, flip selected objects horizontally. We're going to do that, and it has successfully mirror imaged the front of our pillow. Let's zoom out so you can see the printing page right here. I'm going to center that with Align and Distribute. I'm going to change the drop down to Page, and we can center that photograph right on our page. We're ready to save. So whether you've cropped just a single photo or you've made a collage of photos and text like this, either way, when saving, I like to save as a PDF. So we're going to go up to File, and we're going to go to Save As. Now we're going to pick wherever you want to save this file. I'm going to put mine right on the desktop, and I'm going to call mine Print Pillow. Type in whatever you need to type in. And Save As Type. We're going to click on this box here, and a menu pops up. We're going to scroll through all of these options until we see the PDF. We're going to click on that. And we're going to click Save, which I think my face is in front of. But you'll see the Save button off to the right. And when you do, this last box pops up. I don't change any of the default settings when saving. We're saving at a 300 dpi. I believe that is the default. We're going to say OK. Now it's going to take a second to render that and to save it. But once it is saved, we can, at this point, close down Inkscape. Now guess what? At this point, we are done with our computer, except for one more thing. We have to print the photo. So in the next video, we're going to open up the PDF. I'm going to show you my print settings, which there's a few tweaks you can do with that to help get some really nice results when printing. So one more video at the computer.